Hello everyone, welcome back to video tutorial on the module RTOS, that is Real-Time Operating System for Embedded System Design. So in previous two lectures, we have gone through initial topics of this module, that is operating system basics and types of operating systems, right? So now we shall go through the next topic, that is task, process and threads. So here we will be going through the definition of task, process and thread. So if you look into the definition of task in OS context, a task is defined as the program in execution and the related information maintained by the OS for the program. So what we can say is that a task is nothing but a program in execution. So one thing is the entire program will not be executed at once. So when you start executing, either it could be parallel execution or it could be sequential execution, a part of program will be executed. So we can say that a task is a part of program that is being executed. So it could be one of the instruction in your program. So we can consider that as also a task, okay, or a set of instructions in a program can be considered as a task, okay. So a task is also known as job in OS context. And then a program or part of its execution is also called as process, okay. So what we can infer from these definitions of task, job and process is that the terms task, job and process refers to the same entity with respect to operating system context. So whenever we are using these terms, we can use them interchangeably. So if we go in deep with respect to process, that is we are going in deep with respect to task, job or process. So it is also known as an instance of program in execution. So it is one of the instance of a complete program. So process can be considered as an instance of a complete program. Multiple instances of the same program can execute simultaneously. So when we are talking with respect to processes, we can divide our entire program into multiple processes and we can see that all these multiple processes are executed simultaneously. How? We will be seeing that in future. So a process requires various system resources like CPU for executing the process, memory for storing the code corresponding to the process and associated variables, IO devices for information exchange, etc. So when you divide a program into process, yes, when you divide a program into number of processes, so corresponding to each process there will be a code, correct? So in order to store that code and the variables which are required to execute that code, we require memory, and in order to carry out execution we require processor, and then if it requires any input from any of the device and if the process wants to send output to any of the device, then it requires IO devices, right? So that is what it is being said. And a process is sequential in execution. So what we should know is that the process will be executed in sequential manner. So it could be multiple processes. Each process will be executed sequentially. So next we shall see the structure of a process. Okay. So the concept of process leads to concurrent execution of tasks, thereby the efficient utilization of CPU and other system resources. So what is the necessity of dividing a program into number of tasks or process means? So through this we can achieve effective utilization of CPU and also other system resources. The next point is that a process mimics a processor in properties and it holds a stack for holding the local variables, and then a set of working registers, and then a process status register, and then a program counter to point to the next executable instruction of the process, and then code corresponding to that process. Correct? So a process will be similar to that of a processor. So a processor will be having a memory, processor will be having registers. So similarly, process is going to mimic the processor and it is going to have. So if you look into this, so if let us consider this as a structure of process, so process will be having a stack memory. So why stack memory is required means for holding the local variables associated with the process, okay, and then working registers. So in order to store the temporary data or during the execution of a instruction. So if any computations needs to be taken place, it will be taking place in working registers. And then we have status register. So in order to know the status of execution of a particular process, so how much of execution is completed, and then program counter. So as we saw in the previous slide, process is nothing but what? A part of a program. So part of a program again involves number of instructions being executed, correct? So a process is what? A program or an instance of program or a part of program in execution. So which instruction is being executed currently corresponding to a process will be pointed by whom? A program counter. And then to store all the code that is related to a particular process, so each individual process will be having a code memory. Okay, so what we have to understand here is that system resources that was allocated for a particular program will be divided between the processes. Okay, and then is memory organization of a process. So how a memory is organized with respect to a process. We have seen memory organization with respect to a program. A process which inherits all properties of CPU can be considered as a virtual processor awaiting its turn to have its properties switched into the physical processor. So in previous slide what we saw is a process is going to mimic a processor. So processor is a physical entity, so its virtual form of physical processor is process. So it can be considered as a virtual processor. So all that what is there in processor will be there with respect to process also. So here it is considered as a virtual processor. Once the process is scheduled for executing, or once the process is being executed, all those information which were there in virtual entity will be copied into physical entity, that is processor. Okay. Next, when a process gets its turn, it registers and the PC register maps to physical registers of CPU. So as I told, so when a process is get its turn, that is when a process is being scheduled for execution, so what were the registers content which were virtual and what was the program counter content virtual, all those things will be mapped to physical registers of processor or CPU. Okay. On loading a processor into main memory, a specific area of memory is allocated for the process. So since we are talking about memory organization of a process, so what happens is that, so unless it is scheduled, so all those things, all this memory or register or any system resource which was allocated to the process will be in virtual form. Okay, they will not physically present, but it is just allocated to the particular process. Once the process is get scheduled, so all this which were in virtual form get mapped with the physical entity, that is CPU and corresponding registers of CPU. So let us consider this to be the memory that is allocated for a particular process. Okay. So what it has, the first part of the memory allocated will be having code memory. So it contains the program code corresponding to a process. What is the code that is required for executing a process will be stored in this memory. And next part is data memory. So this is going to hold all the global data for the process. So what are the data that is required for execution of that code? Okay, so that will be stored in data memory. And another type of memory is what? Stack memory. So this is going to hold all temporary data such as variables which are local to the process. And next thing what we need to consider is that, so here we have seen that a data memory is there. So when new data or new variables are generated during the execution of process, so the data memory grows upwards. Okay, and when the local variables are generated with respect to process, so the stack memory extends, but this stack memory is going to extend downwards. Okay, so if you consider that a memory area for a process is from 2048 to 2100, that is 2048 to 2100. So these can be considered as addresses. So this much of addresses are allocated for a process. So in that case, so at 2048, that is at the base address, there will be code memory. The stack memory will always start from top of the allocated memory. So the top address here is 2100. So from there it starts and it is going to grow downwards. So this is about memory organization of a process. Yes. So next topic is process states and state transition. Okay. So we said that the program will be divided into number of parts or instances, and those are called as process. So now we shall see process states and state transition. So this process can be in number of states. Okay. So the creation of process to its termination is not a single step operation. Then so once you divide a program into process, so you say that a process is created, and once it is executed and the results are stored, then we say that process is completed or terminated. But the step from process creation to process termination cannot be considered as a single step. Okay, so the process is going to traverse a series of states during its transition from newly created state to terminated state, or intermediate stages from creation to termination. This traverse is called as process life cycle. Okay. So let us consider process state and state transition representation. So here we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So 5 ovals. So which represents states. Okay. So which are the states means? So first is created state. So when you say that a process in created state means a state at which a process is created, operating system recognizes that a process is created but no resources are allocated. So a program is there and you are going to divide that program into number of instances. So what it means? A process is created. Correct? So at this point of time, the OS will recognize that a process is being created, but no resources are allocated to that process. So that stage of process is called as created state. Okay. And next state is ready state. So what is this means? This is the state where a process is incepted into memory and awaiting processor time for execution. So process is placed in ready list queue. So the code corresponding to a particular process is loaded into the memory, but CPU is not allocated. So it is waiting to get the CPU so that it can start this execution. So that state is called as ready state. So usually when you load the code corresponding to a process, then we say that the process is in ready list queue. There will be number of processes whose code will be loaded into memory. All these processes will be in a queue, and this queue is called as what? Ready list queue, and all the processes which are in ready list queue will be considered to be in ready state. Okay. And next state is running state. Now CPU has been allocated and the process is being executed inside the processor or CPU. Then we say that the process is in running state. So it is the state at which a process execution happens. Okay. And next state is blocked or wait state. So it is a state where a running process is temporarily suspended from execution and does not have immediate access to resources. So what it means is that process got an opportunity or it was scheduled, so it got CPU and it started its execution. Okay, it was in running state, but there could be some IO requirement. Yes, so unless an input is supplied from that input device, the process cannot continue its execution. So in that case, what we can do is that we can temporarily suspend the execution of such a process and we can send it to some state that is called as block state. Next is completed state. So this is the state where process completes its execution. So process was scheduled, it was running, and then it has executed all the code corresponding to that process. So then we say that process has completed its execution. Okay. So these are the states of process. Yes. So next is transition of a process from one state to another is called as state transition. Okay, so we have come across different states of a process. So change of process from one state to another state is called as state transition. So here we can see that a process has changed from created state to ready state. So when the state transition occurs means when the code corresponding to a process is encrypted into memory. That is, when we load a code corresponding to a particular process into memory, then we say that the process has changed its state from created to ready state. Okay, that is, there is a state transition from created state to ready state. Next is state transition from ready to running state, and when this occurs means when the process is scheduled for execution. That is, when the CPU is allocated for a particular process to execute. When it starts executing, we say that it is in running state, and change of state from ready to running state. Okay, so state transition is from ready state to running state. Done. So there can be state transition from running state back to ready state, and when this occurs means when there is an interrupt or preemption occurs. So what is an interrupt? We have come across different types of interrupts in previous lecture. So there could be synchronous interrupt or asynchronous interrupt. When any one of these interrupt occurs, so the process which was being executed will be sent to ready state. Okay, so that is, it will be sent to ready queue. Done. And what is preemption means? Forcibly suspending the execution of a process. So this preemption can be either priority based or it could be time based. So time based means a particular process will be scheduled for execution for a particular amount of time. So after that time slot or after that time duration, it will be sent back to ready queue. Again it will be scheduled for same amount of time after some instance. Okay, that is time based preemption. And priority based preemption means, so suppose you are executing a process, that is, process is being running or it is being executed, so there is one more process getting entry into the ready queue, so with a higher priority. So compared to the process that is being executed now, there is one more process that is entering into the ready queue with higher priority. In that case, what happens? The currently executing process will be sent back to ready queue, and the process which just entered with higher priority will be scheduled for execution. Okay, so that is when state transition takes place from running state to ready state. And next is changing the state or state transition from running state to block state. So a process will be executing. There may be a requirement of certain input from any one of the input device. That input is not available at that instance of time. So what we do is that instead of preempting that process, you are going to send that process to block state. Okay, or there may be some necessity of a data variable which should have been created by any other process. Okay, but it is not created, or there could be any other system resources required, but it is not available at that particular instance of execution. The process will be sent to block state, and there it is going to wait for that particular IO device or particular system resource or some variable. So this is where we call that state transition taken place from running state to block state. Okay, so if the process is in block state, once it gets the resources or variable or IO what it was waiting for, it will not get back to running state. Instead, it will be sent to ready state. And next is state transition from running to completed. So when the complete code corresponding to a particular process is executed, okay, then we say that there is a state transition from running state to completed state. Okay, so this is with respect to process states and state transition representation. Next point is threads. What are threads? So till now we have come across process or task or job. So all these things means the same. What are those? Those are nothing but parts or instances of a program. Yes, a program will be divided into number of process or tasks. So what are threads means? A thread is the primitive that can execute code. So what we can say is that a thread is a part of a process. Okay, so please understand. So program will be divided into number of processes, and the processes will be divided into number of threads. Okay, a thread is a single sequential flow of control within a process. Suppose we consider, for example, a program of 10 instructions. Okay, so let us divide that program into two parts of 5 instructions each. What we are performing here is creation of process. Process 1 with 5 instructions, process 2 with 5 instructions, and next is you are going to divide these 5 instructions again into 5 parts. So these are called as 5 threads corresponding to each process. So this is for an example I have told. Hope you have understood the concept of program, task or a process and a thread. Correct? So we have seen that a process is what? Sequential in execution. So part of that process will also be a sequential in execution. So that is what the second point says. A thread is a sequential flow of control within a process. Okay. And then is what? A thread is also known as light-weighted process. Since it is a part of a process, we can say a thread is a light-weighted process. A process can have many threads of execution. So again here we comes across multiple threads. A process can be divided into number of threads. Okay. So next, if you look here, different threads which are part of a process share the same address space. That is, same code, data and heap memory area. So what we have seen with respect to process is that, so there will be a program. So for a particular program, a particular amount of memory will be allocated, and then so when you divide that program into number of processes, so the memory which was allocated to a particular program will be divided among the processes. So each process will have its separate memory, okay, which is the part of memory that was allocated to the program. Okay, so now what we are doing, the processes will be further divided into something called as threads. Okay, and these threads, suppose if you are going to divide a process into 3 threads, so all these 3 threads will share same memory. Okay, so here the memory will not be divided among the threads. Yes, so it will be shared by the threads. That is what we have to understand. Okay, so if we consider memory organization of process and its associated threads here, so if this is the memory that is allocated to a particular process. Okay, so we have seen that it starts with code memory. So upon this will be data memory, and then we have stack memory. Correct? So data memory and code memory will be same for all the threads for a corresponding process, whereas stack memory will be different for different threads. So a particular amount of stack memory will be allocated for thread 1, particular amount of stack memory will be allocated for thread 2. So one more thing that we need to notice here is stack memory is going to expand downwards, right? Yes. So why we require different stack memory means, so in order to understand the status of execution of different threads. So what is, if you want to understand or if you want to know what is the status of execution of thread 1, then we need to look upon stack memory corresponding to thread 1. Suppose if you want to know the status of execution of thread 2, then we need to look upon stack memory corresponding to thread 2. So threads are going to share common data memory of a process and code memory of a process, but the stack memory of the process will be divided among the different threads, and they will be having their own CPU registers and stack memory and program counters. Yes. Next concept is the concept of multi-threading. So the program will be divided into processes, and process will be further divided into number of threads. So if there are more than one thread, then we say that it is multi-threading. Correct? So a process or thread in an embedded application may be a complex or lengthy one, and it may contain various sub-operations like getting input from IO device connected to the process, performing some internal calculations or operations, or updating some IO devices like this. Correct? So you would have divided your whole application into number of parts, and each of this part will be called as a process. Inside this process or thread, there may be again different tasks that need to be performed. So what are that means? So there may be something like getting an information from the IO device. So that can be considered as a separate thread, or updating the IO device. That can be considered as a separate thread, or performing some calculations. Again, that can be considered as a separate thread. So like this, the concept of multi-threading should be understood. Okay. So if all these sub-operations are executed in sequence, the CPU utilization may not be efficient. Correct? So suppose you require certain data from some certain input device, and if you keep waiting for that data from the input device, so all the other tasks what we saw there, so calculation or updating, those things will be halted. So as a result, what happens? The CPU utilization will not be effective. Correct? So if there is sequence, if all these tasks are executed in sequence, okay, then CPU utilization will not be effective. So what we can do is that instead of the single sequential execution of the whole process, yes, so we have seen that a process is sequential execution. So instead of the single sequential execution of the whole process, if the task or process is split into different threads carrying out these different sub-functionalities of the process, then the CPU can be effectively utilized. So why we say this? How we can say that CPU is effectively utilized means, suppose there is a thread which requires IO, so it will be halted. So at that point of time, we can execute or we can schedule any other thread which may not require IO. So it continues its execution. So during the time where a thread requires IO, instead of halting the CPU execution, we are using the CPU. Yes, so that is why we say that effective utilization of CPU can be achieved by the concept of multi-threading. So one more thing is that when you are performing multi-threading, a process will be split into multiple threads, so wherein which is going to execute a part of process, correct? But first there will be a main thread and the rest of them will be created within the main thread. Yes, so when you are dividing the process into number of threads, first you are going to generate or create a main thread. So this main thread is going to create the rest of the threads. That is what we need to understand. And then use of multiple threads to execute a process. So what are the advantages of multi-threading means? So first is better memory utilization. So multiple threads of the same process share same address space for the data memory. Yes, so the data memory and also code memory will be same for all the threads. So in this way we can achieve better memory utilization. And next is speedy execution. So suppose if there is any IO requirement or any resource requirement, that particular thread can be halted and other threads which may not require any IO or any shared at that point of time will be scheduled and execution continues. As a result, the speed of execution will be increased. And then efficient use of CPU, that is efficient CPU utilization can be achieved as CPU will be engaged for all time. So CPU will not be in rested or it will not be in sleep mode. So if you look into the process with a multiple thread, so let us consider this as a single process. Okay, so there will be a code memory corresponding to a process, then there will be a data memory corresponding to a process. So if you think that process is divided into number of threads. So now if we consider this process is divided into number of threads, then what happens? So within that same code memory, data memory, there will be a thread 1 with its own stack memory and registers. Okay, and there will be one more like thread 2. So it is going to share same code memory and data memory of process, but it will be having its own stack and registers. Similarly, thread 3. Yes, so here a single process is divided into 3 threads. So wherein all the 3 threads share the same code memory and data memory of the process, but they will be having their own stack memory and registers. That is what we need to understand from the concept of multi-threading. Yes, hope you got this point. Next concept is thread standard. So what is this thread standard? Thread standard deals with different standards available for thread creation and management. So these standards utilize operating system for thread creation and management. So different types of threads can be created which are of different levels or standards. Okay, so these thread standards are going to create the threads with the help of operating system, which involves a set of thread class libraries. So there are readily available libraries called as thread class libraries. Using this, operating system is going to create threads of different standards. Okay, so the commonly available thread class libraries or standard libraries available for creation of threads are POSIX threads, Win32 threads and Java threads. So these are the different standards of threads that can be created. Okay, so we will be looking into POSIX threads. So POSIX here stands for Portable Operating System Interface. And then this POSIX.4 standard deals with real-time extensions, and POSIX.4a standard deals with thread extensions. Okay, so the POSIX standard library for thread creation and management is pthreads. So pthreads is the standard library that will be used by the operating system to create threads of POSIX standard. Okay, so pthread library defines a set of POSIX thread creation and management functions which will be in C language. Okay, so pthread library is nothing but a set of functions which are written in C language and which are used for creation and management of POSIX threads. Done? So let us go through some primitive POSIX thread functions. Okay, so here we can see a primitive. So what it does, the above primitive is used for creating new thread for running the function start function. So this is a primitive that is used for creating a new pthread. So pthread create is the function that will be used for creating a new pthread. And what is the name of that function? It is start function here. Okay, so in this place we can give other names, and that will be the name of the function that will be created with the help of pthread. Okay, so here pthread underscore t is the handle to newly created thread. So that forms the gateway for data exchange between the different threads. And pthread underscore attr underscore t, that is pthread attribute t, will be the data type of attributes of the newly created pthread. And arguments, what we are seeing in second line, will be the parameters that will be passed when we want to define or declare a function or a new function with the name start function. Okay, once a new POSIX thread is created, then this pthread create associates the PCB corresponding to the newly created thread to variable of type pthread underscore t. So we have seen that threads are created from processors. So for each process there will be a process control block PCB. So the threads which are created for a process should be associated to that corresponding PCB, and that is done by the function pthread underscore create. Okay. So there is one more primitive. The function is pthread join. Okay, so the above primitive blocks the current thread and waits until the completion of thread pointed by it. So in previous slides I said that whenever a thread is created from a process, first a main thread is created, then this main thread is going to create the remaining threads. Okay, suppose the execution of main thread is completed, but other threads generated by that main thread is being executed. In that case, so this function pthread join sees that not any other pthread is executed unless all the threads related to main thread is completed. Okay, only after all the threads that are related or created by the main thread completes their execution, then any other threads can be executed. So all POSIX thread calls return an integer. So this is a main point to notice. So all POSIX thread calls returns an integer. So whenever we call a POSIX thread, okay, after the execution of POSIX thread, at the end they are going to return some integer value. So they are going to return some integer value. If this return value is 0, it indicates success of pthread execution. So it is a good practice that every time we call a pthread, we check for its return value so that we can know whether the call was success or a failure. Okay. So next thing is we need to look at an example wherein we have to write a multi-thread application to print hello I am in main thread from the main thread, and then hello I am in new thread 5 times each using pthread create and pthread join POSIX primitives. So we have seen pthread create and pthread join primitives. So using this we have to write a multi-thread application wherein what is the function of main thread is the main thread should display a message hello I am in main thread for 5 times, and then it should create a new thread whose function is to again display a message hello I am in new thread for 5 times. Okay, so let us look into the program. So in first part of the program is directives, right? So we have to include standard libraries. So first is hash include pthread.h. So pthread is the standard library for creation of POSIX thread. So first we need to include that. Then we are going to include standard library.h, stdlib.h. Then we are going to include standard input output library, that is stdio.h. Okay. So next part of the program is where we are going to define or declare a function. So here the function name is new thread. Okay, void star new underscore thread. So that will be the name, and whatever is there in the braces are the arguments. So in this function we have two variables I and j of type integer. Then we have a for loop wherein j is equal to 0, j less than 5, j plus plus. So we are going to execute for loop for 5 times, and for in each loop we are going to print a message hello I am in new thread. Okay, and that second for loop, that is for I is equal to 0, I less than 10,000, I plus plus is for delay. So there should be a delay between two consecutive display of messages, right? And later it should return a null value. So null value is 0, means the pthread what it was called, yes, is successfully executed, correct? That is what it indicates. So next we are having the main function or main program. In that again we have two variables I and j which are of integer type. Then we have a variable pthread underscore t which acts as a handle for new thread, and then the tcb which is going to act as a pointer for new thread. Okay, so here what we have written, if pthread create, so we are calling the primitive pthread create for creating a new thread, and we are going to pass the arguments pointer tcb null new thread, that is name of the thread that we want to create, or call the function what we are going to call, and then null. Okay, and then if this returns logic 1, then we are going to print error in creating new thread. Why? If it is going to return 0, it indicates success of thread call. So here if it is going to return 1 as return value, which means it is a failure. So we are going to print an error message and then return a value -1. Then for j is equal to 0, j less than 5, j plus plus. So this is the steps that need to be taken place or executed in main thread. So one of the function of main thread is what? It should create a new thread. Another function of that main thread is to print the message hello I am in main thread for 5 times. So for that we have written a code, and at the end of this we have written, or we have used one more function, that is, or one more primitive, that is pthread underscore join. If pthread join, and in the braces we are feeding the parameters or arguments tcb and null. Okay, and if it is 1, again it is indicates failure, so it is going to display a error message, error in thread joining, and it is going to return -1 value, else it is going to return +1 value, indicating that so pthread join was successful. Done. So this is the program. And then what are the things that we need to know about this thread standard is that, so in case of these pthreads, termination can be carried out in different ways. So one of the way is natural termination and another way is forced termination. So what is this natural termination means? Threads are going to complete their execution when they come across written statement. So they are going to naturally terminate and they are going to return the value of their execution. That is natural termination, or by executing pthread exit. So natural termination can be one more type wherein using pthread exit. Okay. So forced termination is by calling pthread cancel or termination of main thread with exit or exec function. So exiting with pthread exit call will not perform a cleanup. That we need to take care of. So what is cleanup means? What it means is that when you exit a thread using pthread underscore exit, so that will terminate only the main thread. All the other threads that were created by the main thread continue their execution till their completion. That is one thing. And they are not going to perform cleanup means all the files that were opened for execution by the main thread or by the threads created by the main thread will not be closed. Okay. So that is why we say that pthread exit will not perform cleanup. It is a good practice that we have to call pthread join at the end of main thread. So why means pthread join is going to perform the cleanup. If we call pthread join, so it is going to associate all the threads and the main threads with the TCB. That is one thing. So all the threads that were created by the main thread again will be combined and associated to TCB if we call pthread join. So these are the points that we need to consider or know with respect to thread standard and also POSIX thread. Okay, so next concept here is difference between a thread and a process. So how can we differentiate thread and a process means? First point says that a thread is a single unit of execution and it is part of process, whereas process is a program in execution and contains one or more threads. Yes, so process is a program in execution or a part of program in execution and it may contain one or more number of threads. Okay. Next point says that thread does not have its own data memory and heap memory. It shares the data memory and heap memory with other threads of same process. So we have seen in structure of multi-thread, correct? We have seen a multi-thread scenario wherein we have seen that so different threads corresponding to a particular process will share same data memory and code memory, but they will be having their own registers and stack memory, correct? So whereas in case of processes, they will be having their own memory, that is they will be having their own code memory and data memory and also stack memory, correct? So data memory, code memory and stack memory will be different for different processes, whereas code memory and data memory of different threads corresponding to a same process will be same. Okay. Next point is thread cannot live independently, it lives within the process. So thread is going to reside within a process, and then process contains at least one thread. Yes, process contains at least one thread. Then we have there can be multiple threads in a process. The first thread calls the main function and occupies the start of stack memory of the process. So again we have seen this with respect to memory organization of a thread. Yes. So code memory will be at the bottom, then we have data memory, and stack memory starts from the top of the memory, and then the top spot is always allocated for main thread and the later spots will be allocated for other threads which are created from the main thread. So then threads within a process shares data, code and heap memory. Each thread holds separate memory area for stack. So the processes, the memory of a process, how a memory of process is divided or organized is what we are seeing here. So the threads corresponding to a process will have same heap memory, data memory and code memory, but they will be holding their separate memory area for stack. Next, threads are very inexpensive to create. So threads can be created very inexpensively. So they will not consume much of system resources. Okay. processes are very expensive to create as they involve many OS overhead. So usually threads are created by the process and they are inexpensive to create, that is they does not require much of system resources, whereas processes are created by operating system. So it is depending on operating system how the program will be divided into process. So it requires much of OS overhead. The next point is context switching is inexpensive and fast. When we are switching from one thread to another thread, so there we come across context switching, and this is very inexpensive in case of thread. So switching from one thread to another thread is very easy and it consumes less time. Whereas switching from one process to another process is complex and it involves lot of operating system overhead and it is comparatively slower. So switching between the threads is faster. Switching between a process and one more other process is little bit or relatively slower. Then if a thread expires, its stack is reclaimed by the process. So we have seen that code memory and data memory will not be different for different threads, but stack will be different for different threads of a process, right? So if a thread gets terminated or deleted or it expires, what happens? So the stack memory which was allocated for that thread will be reclaimed by the process. Okay. Next, if a process dies, the resources allocated to it is reclaimed by the operating system and also all the associated threads of the process also die. So if a process dies, if a process expires, the memory or any other system related to that process will be reclaimed by the operating system. So, and all the threads which were created by that particular process which expired will also die. Yes? Why means we have seen that thread is not an independent entity. So it always resides in a process. If a process dies, thread also dies. Okay. So those are the differences between the thread and a process. Okay. So that is with respect to the concept of task, process and threads. So let me stop here for this video. We shall see the remaining topics in the future video. So till then, take care and goodbye.